3.39 million last year to just over 1.4 billion people. Just under 8 million babies were born last year. That is a record low. The government has recently launched a series of incentives to boost the country's birth rate. Now, Xiaolin Chen is the head of international at KraneShares, the China-focused investment management company. Thank you so much for joining us. So China's growth rate is lower than it's been historically since 2000, when it was hitting 8–9%, even higher. But it's doing better than its peers currently. So how reassuring are these growth figures for 2025?
Thank you, Sally, for having me on your program. Clearly, this is a hot topic. Not only the investors keep an eye on this data purely because China used to be the big manufacturing hub. The government, obviously, from the top down, is trying to focus on this issue because they want to continue, the effort they have been built for years to continue to grow the country in any possible way. But one thing we need to correct the investors, memory for China is it's no longer a cheap value chain, low value chain manufacturing country anymore. It's focusing on high value chain. So producing labor force is not the focus for China to grow its economy anymore. It has been automated in any ways possible. Last year, China delivered over 130 to 140 billion parcels in a year. There's no country can deliver that without automation. It's a classic example for slightly lower paid value chain, societies or industries that China is focusing on automation. This is in the area that the government is putting in, like you said early on, a lot of incentive policy for the country or to encourage households to have more children. I'm afraid this will be a long-term policy, which is China's government has set it straight. It's a long-term support will be put in place. We have to wait and see. Patience is the key here, I'm afraid.
Let's just jump into that birth rate story. How much of a concern is it for the economy that birth rates are declining in China?
In the very long term, if this risk continue for decades to come, which we don't know the data yet, it could be present an issue for people to believe you are heavily loaded for aging population. That's one issue. Yes, we need to wait for the data to release, but I sincerely think the incentive policy will work in a few years' time, just medium term. We have to allow time. That's one. Second, aging population is a definition that how you define age. In China, some of the white collar, blue collar, whatever you name them, they can be retiring at 50, maybe near 60. Sally, to me, 60, life only just started. You can't retire at that age. So if they have been putting the policy in the right place, which they have started the step already, to increase the retirement age, you're going to have a huge group of people with experience, with knowledge that continue to join the workforce. So they won't face immediate challenge in the workforce place at all, not in the near term.
Interesting points. I've got to ask you a little bit more about the trade surplus. I mean, despite the threat of tariffs from the US, we saw exports surge. What is China getting right there? And a comment as well about the lower consumer spending, your concerns on the domestic front.
That's a great question, because a lot of people looking at the data, is it 5%, is it not 5%? Doesn't matter. The issue for China this year is facing a surprise on the trade tariff talk. With that as headline news to hit the economy, China put the right policy in place, incentivize lowering the borrowing costs. And that's why you see December, such a seasonal month, that you see exports grown 6.6%. The automobiles, in particular auto export, jumped 71%. That's a great result, particularly with all the headline news. Policy slightly, slowly, gradually hit the ground to help the economy to back on foot. And you're absolutely right to point out, the full year of 2025, China recorded all-time high trade surplus of 1.2 trillion. I think yet again, shows this is the economy that is very resilient as one. Second, it does have a full of a pocket. We call them dry powder per se. It's a policy support from the government. Not only policy, monetary and physical are all ready. I agree they're doing them in the orderly, in a more of the managed fashion, purely because they want to be very cautious to how they want to support this economy. To me, this year is a great result for China. Yes, it's not 8–9%, but with what they face, with how they manage to deal with the uncertainty and with the results today, I think this is a good year.